Meta, it needs to deliver a positive return to as many advertisers as possible because that is how they generate the most money possible.
For some of the bigger consumer brands, we've seen incremental attribution do really, really well and beat the traditional sort of attribution window.
The whole point is make the creative good and then do as much of that as fast and cheap as possible with as much creative diversity as possible.
Where the data tells a story that's gotta be told. It's the art and the science, get the numbers right.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Brandformance. This is a replay of our live office hours, and this one was with Andrew Faris. He's the CEO of AJF Growth, which is an agency focused on meta for e-commerce brands. Andrew has specialized in growing 7- and 8-figure brands profitably, and he's been doing this for more than a decade as a marketer, as an executive, as a founder, and previously was with Common Thread Collective. He's also a host of his own podcast called Andrew Faris Podcast, and I highly recommend you give him a follow if you do anything on the Meta Ads platform. So let's dive in. Welcome. Thank you for joining. This is going to be a very fun session. If you haven't heard Andrew talk about all things Meta on his own podcast, this will be a nice little summary of his spicy takes. We're going to cover a lot of interesting stuff, so stay tuned. We're going to talk about all things Meta, and I've been following you, Andrew. Thank you for joining on this office hours. I've been following you for a while. I've been listening to your podcast, and I feel like I've learned a ton from just your sort of commentary on this whole topic. So welcome. Just a quick intro for folks who may not be familiar. I'm Pranav. I'm one of the people behind Paramark. We do everything on incrementality measurement, marketing mix modeling, all that fun stuff. And we've got Andrew, who runs AJF Growth, which is very cleverly named after his first name. I'm just kidding. And you come from a history and tons of experience in media buying across Meta and other platforms, supporting e-com brands, 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure brands. So tons of history. You should go check out Andrew on his podcast, on his website, on his X, or Twitter, whichever you prefer to call it, and we will kick it off. Andrew, you want to start off with just anything else you want to add from your intro?
Nope, nailed it.
All right, fantastic. So 5 topics. We're going to talk about a bunch of what I call paradoxes in meta ads. We're going to talk about this concept of explore versus expand. AI creative is obviously very top of mind for people, bidding mechanisms, and then all the things that you need to have a really excellent sort of operating cadence for your brand. So let's start with the first one. And full disclosure here, I myself am not a meta ads expert. So the reason I'm doing this selfishly is to become an expert and to learn from the best. And there's so much jargon, Andrew, in this world. ABO, CBO, bid caps, cost caps, manual bidding, with all the ASC and advantage stuff. It's mind-numbing to me sometimes, like how you even make sense of all of that stuff if you're not in the platform day-to-day. So I want to start with the first debate, this idea of like testing and scaling. Mm-hmm. How do you think about ABO, CBO, scaling, testing? Like, what is your, like, if you're advising an e-com or any type of meta advertiser, like, hey, here's how you should set up your scaling versus testing program, what should people do?
I think what's really going to be most helpful for anybody watching or listening to this is to understand where I am coming from at the level of first principles. And that if you understand what I'm about to say right now, you will understand every answer that I give for the rest of the time. And so before I answer any of these individual ones, let me tell you how I think about what meta ads is and what it's good at. Meta ads is a technological marvel. It is an incredible problem that is being solved by the people who built machine learning and the auction that drives meta ads. Consider that meta ads has 3 million advertisers. I don't know if that's just the US or across the world, but probably more across the world. 3 million advertisers. Let's just take the US, hundreds of millions of users across multiple platforms, multiple placements per platform. And meta ads has the job of delivering a return on ad spend that is positive to its advertisers. Positive can mean any number of things. Like it could be like an enterprise value, an enterprise customer who actually doesn't care about short-term returns, but views the return on that on a much longer time scale. It can mean the $5 million D2C brand that needs money back right now because they're bootstrapped. It can mean anything. It can mean whatever the advertiser defines it as, right? But Meta, it needs to deliver a positive return to as many advertisers as possible, because that is how they generate the most money possible, right? The more that you deliver, you experience a return on your spend, the more money you're going to give Meta. And so they have a very strong incentive to give you a high return on spend. And then to do that at the maximal level for their shareholders, right? So that they are able to generate the most total dollars, which means there's this like insane efficiency problem, which is, again, billions, countless billions of impressions per day, each individual ad entering an auction to win that space, every ad competing in an auction across millions of advertisers, hundreds of millions of users, billions of placements, and they can deliver that with increasing efficiency every year, all the time, okay? And of course, Meta's answer to that problem is with massive amounts of algorithmic machine learning, right? That's the way that they do that. And so, if that is what they do, if that is what Meta is and does, they solve this problem in this extraordinary way. Sometimes, little old media buyer, Andrew Faris or whoever, it's really not about how good or bad I am or you are, or how smart or not I am or you are. Little old media buyer sometimes goes like, ooh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to insert myself into that process and tell Meta where to put my ads and when to run them and when not to and when to turn them up. And that is insanity, because it is all built off of this giant machine learning auction thing that does all of this incredible work for you at hyper blazing fast speeds at hyper scale, right? And so the idea that I would somehow want to insert myself into the process of the decision making there is crazy talk. It is, I think it actually reflects a lack of understanding of what Meta actually is at the baseline level. So then when you get to a question like testing versus scaling, my answer is, how do I harness Meta's machine learning skills as often as possible to leverage its probabilistic forecasting machine, which is what Meta basically is, a gigantic hyperscale probabilistic forecasting machine. How do I leverage that, all of that compute, all of that machine learning power, all of that Bayesian logic for my advertising account, for my client or whatever? And so I'm going to use every tool Meta will allow me to use that is going to allow me to do that, okay? That's the way that I'm built. So testing versus scaling ABO to test. One way to approach creative testing is to manually distribute budget to individual ads, because I then look and analyze the performance of a given ad and say, do I want to scale this ad or not? But that's crazy, because actually, first of all, I'm going to analyze that on the basis of like a few purchases. Why?
Yeah.
So just like tiny sample sets with no real predictive value or whatever, unless I'm spending unbelievable amounts of money, which nobody is here. Nobody who's on this is. Yeah. Anyway. And so then I'm going to go and I'm going to try and scale the winners and suppress the losers myself. Why would I do that when Meta has tools that actually force ranks all of my ads for me based on the outcome that I say, and the outcome that I'm pursuing, which is either the highest value creation for a conversion optimized bidder, highest value creation, or the lowest CPA, and then it will force rank those instead of me making the decisions about how to rank those ads and which ones to suppress, to amplify and which ones to suppress. I'm going to let Meta do that. My job is to understand deeply my financial targets, understand deeply my business and outcomes and inventory position and cash dynamics and all those things, and then to set up the account in a way that's logical so that Meta then can take all that machine learning tools or all those machine learning tools or whatever and scale or suppress based on the financial outcomes that I want. And so when you get to testing versus scaling, get rid of your testing campaign. First of all, I'll say something about that in a second, but get rid of your testing campaign, just launch the ads together, launch all your ads together, and let Meta sort out which ones to scale and which ones not to. Don't sit there and try to insert yourself into the process. One more thing about this, as anybody who has heard me talk about this before will know I'm about to say, creative testing is also just like, the idea of a creative testing campaign is also very silly in terms of what it actually is. Like, what a creative testing campaign is, it's actually not a thing. It's just a campaign. But some media buyer goes in and renames the campaign creative testing and then suddenly gives themselves permission to waste a bunch of money. Like, for whatever reason, just by me changing the name of the campaign, which literally is no different than any other campaign. Like, to Meta's eyes, it's the same thing, right? Yep. But suddenly I now am free to spend a bunch of money below my target return. And it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why would you do that? Why would you instead turn that campaign off, get rid of it completely, launch your ads against all your winners, let Meta sort it all out? And wouldn't you know it, when that happens, you end up shaving a massive cost center off of your business and driving more profit in the bottom line. So there's that.
I have a question for you there. So let's say you do that, right? So you've got all of your ads competing against each other. Some ads have more history to them. Some ads are relatively new, right? Because you've just added them to the mix.
Yeah.
How do you think about that? Do you need to give it a certain amount of time? Like, again, to your point about, has your ad had enough at-bats to even sort of compete against your winners?
Yeah.
And is Meta's
Yeah.
algorithm good enough, like to and we don't know, right? We're on the outside. I'm curious what you think about that.
I have a couple thoughts about it. One of them is you're basically right that that's a dynamic in meta ads, that sort of more proven winners have an advantage in your ad account. I just don't know why that's bad. Why would anybody say that's bad? Like I when I look at that, I'd say like in general, that's probably a good thing, and because it sort of biases your ad account towards your winners. It's only a bad thing really if you have no winners. And that's really mostly a time game. Given like if you have to get your ad live and get your new winner live and you want it to scale like right away that single day immediately, then yeah, you probably, like, for example, there are moments when you have to do this, like in a sale. If you're running a sale, you actually don't have time to let Meta warm up. And there are times, this is like probably the best use of something like an auto bidding tool to me or something like that, is where you actually have a real time constraint on this. But if you're just launching evergreen winners, tests against your winners, you ought to just allow Meta some time to sort this out, because it will figure that out over some time. And I've definitely seen that, where like I launch an ad and for 2-3 weeks it doesn't do anything, but then over time it picks up a bunch more. As long as I'm running my business according to a forecast and I'm on that forecast, and I don't need to do anything dramatic or whatever, then to me it ends up being like not really a big deal if occasionally there's some lag in that process. But the second thing about this is that it's also a smaller problem, I think, than people think, because one of the things you have to understand about Meta is that it is a, like I said, Bayesian probabilistic forecasting machine, which just means, all I mean is that Meta takes small amounts of data that have a reliable predictive relationship to the future and uses that small data to predict what's going to happen next. And what we all know that data is engagement signals. And so if you think about, like, just imagine you have like a $20 CPM, okay? When you've then put $10 into Meta, you now have 500 impressions of your ad. And of those 500 impressions, you get, let's say it's a video, you get X number of 3-second video views, probably to the tune of 30 to 40%. That's actually a decent number. That's actually like a larger sample pretty fast than you think. So what that means is, if let's say you get 200 3-second video views, and Meta can reliably predict the relationship between 3-second video views and conversions and cost for those things, which I think it can, then actually on like $5-10, depending on your CPM, if you're like in supplements, gets more expensive, but you get $100 CPMs, whatever. But if you're in that kind of world, then actually I think Meta gets more signal faster than people realize based on upper funnel metrics. Now, I don't think that you or I ought to read the upper funnel metrics that way, because I don't have the sophistication to do the Bayesian probabilistic modeling. Okay, but and I don't have to have the sophistication to do that against the 500 ads we launch for clients every month or whatever, right? So yeah, but I think
very clarifying.
It doesn't need very much spend to get some signal. And what I think Meta does is it boosts the ad in accordance with the signal, right? So the stronger the signal gets, the more aggressively it boosts the ad. So the reason I think there are sometimes a 2-3 week delay or whatever is that the signal isn't that strong at first, but over time it piles up and sort of feeds that. I think that's what's happening. In fact, I think everybody kind of knows that's what's happening, because everybody looks at things like CTR and video views and hook rate and things like that, and analyzes their ads that way, because we all understand that like conversion is actually the smallest, by definition, the smallest sample number that you're getting. And if you try to make all your decisions based off that, you're in trouble.
Love it. Okay, let's talk about the other two topics here. So one is broad versus interest, and this idea of manual bids versus highest volume. There's a whole bunch of dynamic there. So what is your take on those two topics? Is there a specific point of view that you believe in?
3-second take on broad versus interest. Run broad. Interest is not only is it useless for you to, again, insert yourself into the process and choose the interests. Meta's, again, forecasting every audience based off of who responds to your ads. It's basically building a lookalike at the ad level. And as people respond to the ad, it builds a lookalike off of that for you and finds more people who are engaging at the level of creative. So creative is targeting. So you don't need to target. In fact, Meta has actively said they're basically ignoring your targeting anyway. You like put something in there, but I think that's just like a blankie for advertisers. Just to
really, they said that? Like that's public? Like
yeah, they said like
they've hinted at it
beyond your audience to find other people like this. And like I said, I think they allow you to target still, because like it's sort of like a, like I said, like it's a blankie for advertisers.
Users want it, right? Like media buyers want to be able to do it.
You can have it, but we're actually going to go beyond that if it helps you. So don't waste your time with it. Run everything broad. You may do gender or age aimed because of your brand or something like that. There's reasons to do those things, but it's not really about targeting efficiency. Anybody who knows my content knows I'm a huge fan of manual bids. It's the same thing. It's just the same logic. It's that I'm setting financial targets for my advertisers, giving those to Meta and saying spend as much budget as you can while hitting my financial targets as possible. As highest volume is instead saying to Meta, deploy this amount of dollars. I think that doesn't make sense. There's different amounts of users at different times that have different values to you as customers. They're active during different times of day, etc. There are times I think auto bids can be somewhat useful, but we run 99.9% of our spend on it's actually probably less than that. It's probably like 97% of our spend on manual bids and almost 100% of our prospecting. Because give Meta the target and say, this is the financial target that matters to me, and then go scale accordingly. So we run bid caps and target ROAS for pretty much everything. And it works. The thing I've really come around on though with that is that I think it's harder than it looks. I think for a long time, people like me have made it sound like it's really easy. Oh, just give Meta the target and do it. But there's actually some math trickiness to it related to your AOV, related to attribution windows, related to sale moments, related to seasonality, account structures. There's a lot of like details in there. I've come to believe that it's harder than it looks, that great media buying is harder than it looks, and that maybe some things are sort of obvious to me because I've been buying media this way for a long time, and I don't mean that to pump myself up. I just mean I just think it's trickier than it looks.
No, I think you're 100% right. And a good segue on this topic. So you've got, Claude, you've got Manus, you've got, a new agentic media buying tool coming to the surface. And the question I have for you is like, with all the experience that you have and with all the nuances that we just talked about, do you think in the next 12 months there is a possibility that a lot of the media buying is, delegated to an agent? Or do you think that that is not realistic? And I know there's no right answer here because we're still figuring it out, but I'm curious what your take is.
It's so hard for me to imagine. I think it's going to be harder. I think media buying is one of those things that people have been saying for a while will become agentified. And I think an agent would do better than a lot of media buyers, for the record. I just think it's so hard for me to imagine an agent having the context necessary to get some of these details right, specifically at the level of sort of domain expertise for brands. I think this is where the human really matters. It's about the brand's ability to articulate what outcomes they are going after. I think the more a brand can do that, the more likely it is, and can articulate some of the foundations that I'm suggesting in this conversation. I think the more likely it is that an agent can do it. But I think it's going to be much harder than it looks because some of these things change fairly often. And so I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Manus, I've done like one test with Manus so far, and it was the light version of it. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm tempted to not say anything about it because I don't think
okay.
I'll say a quick thing. The very first outputs that it gave were all the same things that Meta's been saying in your ad account for years. It was just like, make sure to run A+ stuff, make sure to run CBO. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, the Meta's been telling you to do that stuff for a very long time. And it's so funny because advertisers just like love to kick against all of that stuff from Meta and talk about how Meta is so stupid with its recommendations. So I think the kind of people who think like me are more likely to adopt some of that stuff. But also maybe because it's AI branded, advertisers will be more open to it. But for a long time, and it's just like very common Twitter conversation for people to be like, look at this hilarious recommendation from Meta. That's so stupid. And it's so annoying that Meta's defaulting me into all of these things that I don't want. And I'm like, I would be annoyed if I was your client and you weren't defaulting into these things because Meta probably knows more than you. So anyway, so far I'm not like there. So it's very hard for me to imagine. Like, I think just getting down to the principles are going to be so hard, and it changes so often for brands. It's something that I think people also don't forget. Like seasonality changes, product level changes, margin level change, and things like this. It's going to be really hard, I think, to keep all of that conversation going to an agent all the time. So I don't know. I mean,
I agree with you. Let's take a couple of questions from the chat. So there's somebody, Vasudha is asking, hey, the average CPA of proven winners tends to go up over time. How do you and yet the algo, continues to spend. How do you break the cycle? Do you break the cycle? What's happening there?
My answer to that is that manual bids should solve this problem. Like if you're running a bid cap, then the CPA will not go up over time. The CPA will stay the same. And what will happen instead is your spend will decline. And so now depends on how much time that is, and how big the audience is. But that's the way I would do it, and then be launching creative against that. So it's kind of that simple. And then as far as if you're auto bidding, you're gonna probably see some more of that. But I also think people are really bad at judging these things, and that actually sometimes that's not really true. Like a CPA actually is like, we're so prone to small sample size bias and to being emotionally reactive. It's like what actually happens is that the CPA goes up for like 2 weeks, but it's actually just because you're not spending that much. The sample size is small, and people don't understand noise. And noise is a very hard idea to get your head around. It's not very intuitive. So yeah.
All right, cool. One other question: how do you feel about the incremental attribution option? You and I we've done some testing around it, but I'm like curious what your take is after it being live for almost a year now.
I think it will work. I don't know. I have not tested it aggressively enough to have a strong answer to this. I want it to work, and I think it will work at some point. I I have one comment from somebody at Meta who I really trust, really smart guy there, who was telling me that for some of his clients, he's like working with advertisers directly. They've tested it more aggressively and seen really, really good returns. They were much larger advertisers than most of, it was like more enterprise level kind of folks. So grain of salt, but I think it's something that should be being tested, and we will be testing it more this year.
Yeah, same here. We've tested it a bunch of larger customers, and we've
I'm
seen
really
some
curious.
really good
What
results.
you probably have better answers than I do on this, Pranav.
Well, the short answer is it doesn't work for everybody, so don't take it as a blanket. But for some of the bigger consumer brands, healthcare brands, we've seen incremental attribution do really, really well and sort of beat the traditional sort of attribution window. So
Yeah,
that's as
interesting.
far as I can say, but I can't
Yeah,
give you
great.
like
I mean, that's
any.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, cool. A couple more questions. Wow, the questions are flowing in.
Yeah.
Janie says, "I love your podcast." Woohoo! Great. So
Yeah.
that's for you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the question. I use manual bids for all prospecting, excluding past purchasers and auto subscribers. What bid type you would use to drive incremental purchases from past purchasers or auto subscribers?
This is basically the only place that we use auto bids because typically the samples are the audiences are just really small. So we run them. We run ads to past customers on auto bids at a small amount, and it's what manual bids. The place where they have the hardest time is when you're getting very few levels of very few numbers of conversions per ad set. And so we tend to run auto bids here. And the key thing that we do is that we assume that some of the even click-based conversions are non-incremental when you're advertising to past customers. And so we just run them at a really high ROAS because we assume there's some cannibalization happen, but there's some real stuff. So that's the way we handle that question. So we run auto bids and we think of it as a smaller thing, and then we just try to track revenue. We're about to set up some conversion lift tests on this. And yeah.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to this podcast today. If you're enjoying the show and if you're getting value out of it, we'd really appreciate if you drop us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app. Great. Okay, I have even more questions, but I'm realizing we're going to run out of time on some of the content. So I'm going to skip ahead and we're going to come back to some of those questions. Okay, so explore and expand. What I'm talking about here is how do you think about, and the core question here is when you're running a whole bunch of different types of creative and you've got different types of ideas, how much of this is about sort of exploring sort of new concepts, new angles, versus just like doubling down on the things that are already working and expanding? Is there a rough sort of, 50-50, 70-30? Like how do you determine the right ratio between those two things?
Explore versus expand is our way of thinking about all creative messaging. Are we trying a new message or are we expanding on a winning message? So if you see a winning ad, you go take the same, we sort of extract the message from the winning ad and then we repackage it in different clothes, That's a mixed metaphor, but you get the idea. So how much do we do both? The answer is it changes for every ad account. There's like one ad account I have right now where they have a pretty wide SKU collection. And the core thing we're doing is just trying to, like the way I say is like sort of cover more SKUs because a lot of their stuff appeals to a lot of people. And just like means finding like for this give back product over here that is these people who are really specifically have an issue and a real relationship to a charity or something like that. Like we're going to put some ads here. And then over here, there's a custom product and that's a really different customer. And then over here, there's a subscription product. So it's like for those, what we've found is just like get more ads across more stuff. For a jewelry brand that I'm working with right now, it's a similar thing. It's like over here, we want to get ads for this product and this product and this product. And that's like the fastest way for us to grow is sort of like, that's all explore, that kind of thing. For other brands of mine, we've seen a lot of success with just like taking winners and continuing to find new ways to repeat the message over time. And it's often hard to beat your like core winner on those, but by finding ways to sort of expand on the message, you end up creating a sort of more stable account because you get spend more and more ads. So if your top ad kind of fades out, eventually you get more. I would say though, on the whole, considering that messaging is targeting, you probably ought to be biased towards explore, find new messages on new products, etc. All other things being equal.
I completely agree. And that's a lot of the research is talking about that as well. Okay, AI creative. We got to talk about this one. You had a particular take on this, which was like, hey, don't actually try to, well, why don't you tell us about your perspective instead of me butchering it? Tell us
I'm
how
going
you
to be
think
really
about
quick here because we actually haven't tested this as much as I wanted to by the time we launched this. It's a compelling thought to me from Taylor Holiday originally. Taylor tweeted a while back. He said something like, a lot of people are trying to use AI to replace real stuff. So you want AI to look real, right? But actually, you should think of it as having like Hollywood style CGI in your pocket, where you could do all kinds of crazy crap, and that's actually much more interesting and a much more engaging way to use AI. And I think that's probably right. And we haven't built this into our process yet, but like going and making crazy hooks. I saw this great video the other day of like a old man walking up to an older woman in the bleachers at like what looks like a little league game or something like that, and shooting her in the chest with a t-shirt cannon from like point blank. Very obviously AI, hilarious, funny looking. It's incredibly engaging. That's the kind of stuff you should be doing with AI. I think that's a good way to use AI to be doing hooky stuff.
Did you see the one David Herman posted about this on X? There was I forget the brand actually, so which is a different problem, but it was some guy getting swept into a tunnel in a flood, and then that's the hook. And then on the other side, there's some pizza restaurant that's offering free food for people affected by the flood. It's just like completely random.
Complete non sequitur. Yeah, I think that's smart. It's sort of on my list, and for me and Patrick to build this into our process more. We just haven't gotten to it yet because there's always too much to do, Pranav.
All right, let's take a question. So one of the questions is it's relevant here. So has Andromeda changed how you treat creative in your accounts? Are there any tools or platforms you recommend for scaling and producing ads?
Andromeda has not changed how we think about this. I don't really I don't understand why people use that word so much. Even like I don't really get. No, I mean, if anything, it's just that there's more reason to have more creative diversity, but that's always been true. So like I think like it hasn't changed it. Maybe it's heightened our approach to it. Generate a high volume of diverse, good quality ads. The creative supply chain idea is really helpful here. Like try to think about how you build the operational process of building a lot of creative fast that accomplishes the things you want it to do. With any supply chain, you don't just want fast and a lot and cheap. You also want it to be good. So when people like me talk about volume creative, it's for some reason everybody assumes that you mean bad and you mean cheap, crappy creative. I don't mean that at all. That the whole point is like make the creative good and then do as much of that as fast and cheap as possible with as much creative diversity as possible. That's a very hard operational problem, and so you should go do that. Yeah. As far as resources goes, yes, AJF Growth is one resource for that. Hire us to do it for you.
AJFgrowth.com.
Yeah. Boom. Hire us to do it for you if you're ready to have a full service agency. That's what we do all the time. My friends at Behind the Scenes Studio are awesome here. btsstudio.co. They're actually the extension of our team that we use. They're like design and edit team. If you want that as more a standalone service, they're based in the Philippines. They do incredible work. I just love them. btsstudio.co. I'll just drop it in the chat really fast. But
Andrew, I have a question for you while you're doing that. So
yeah.
And we'll send out the notes and links to all of these things. I love the idea of creative diversity, but I also hear from some of the, really sort of well-known people in the ad tech industry is like, hey, don't break what's working and have some consistency. Like it's possible. Like here's a great example. I think Geico has run the same ad on Halloween for like the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
What's your thought on those two very opposing points of views on you don't always need to keep changing things, but you also need creative diversity? And maybe I'm missing the point on that, but tell me what you think.
Geico is a funny example here though, because the thing I think of, like that's probably true, but at the same time, they have like 6 spokesmen. They have like the cavemen, they have the little gecko, they have like all kinds of different stuff. And almost certainly that's because they want to appeal to different things,
Great point.
Yeah, I mean, creative diversity it does matter. I think there's some smart people who are really good at thinking about brand and about brand consistency. And I do think there are great brands that purposefully limit their diversity in one sense. But you can do diversity a lot of ways. You can do it with format, you can do it with video versus still, length, influencer, etc., creator versus not. There's just a lot of ways to do it. For the vast majority of people, especially who are probably the kind of people in this group, you should be trying to get as much different creative as possible. Diversity of messaging, diversity of style, diversity of visuals. The trap to avoid is the iteration trap. That's the thing you really don't want to do, where it's like take one image and change 5 different headlines. Andromeda will mark those as all the same ad, and it will only run one of them, and it will pick up randomly. So don't do that.
Cool. All right. We covered this topic already, right? So why manual bids versus sort of highest value or highest volume. So unless you have something additional to add, I'm gonna be like skipping ahead. But tell me if there's anything that comes to mind.
Short answer. One thing to note is that's actually the wrong distinction between highest value, volume, and manual bids. Manual bids are just a version of value or volume. And I actually think it's important that people understand this. There are two ways to optimize your ad spend in Meta if you're optimizing for conversions. One is for the lowest cost CPA possible. Okay, so that's like a CAC optimization. The other one is for the highest value per customer possible. That's a value optimization. Meta calls those highest volume and highest value. Within highest volume, there are then two subsections, which is bid caps and cost caps, which are just different ways to put a governor on your spend. Okay, and that's it. And then within highest value, there's one manual bid option, which is target ROAS, which is more like a cost cap. It's an average, not a threshold. And that's just a way to put a governor on your value optimized spend. So the big thing I think here, first of all, is for people to recognize those two things. You're either going for the lowest cost or the highest value. If you go highest value, you're going to pay a higher CPM, a higher CPC, but you're going to get a higher AOV and a higher conversion rate. Essentially, you're going to pay more for better traffic, and you should do that. And so this is like one of the biggest errors I see most consistently is accounts that still are running $0 in highest value. Anybody watching or listening to this, take your same ads, duplicate them in your exact same setup, but change it from volume to value. Change it from bid cap or cost cap to target ROAS. If you were to look at any of our accounts, you'd see the exact same ads in two different campaigns. One of them is value optimized, one of them is volume optimized. It's with a bid cap or a cost cap. We run that for everything we do, and it works. So you reach additional customers with the same ads by having both. That value optimization really matters.
Let's talk about TROAS because I think I don't fully understand this concept because you're feeding in the value through something like Cappy or what have you to tell Meta that this customer is worth this much to me. Is that fair? And that's what the Meta algo is using.
AOV, Pranav. It's just getting the AOV and updating according to that. By the way, it's really important for people to know too that you tend to have to overshoot your ROAS when you do this. Like if you want a 1.5, you probably should set your target at a 2. So set your target conservatively here. For whatever reason, that's consistently the case. I think over time, this will even out sometimes, but just be ready for that to happen. You could typically find kind of a standard relationship like, okay, I want a 1.5, so I'm going to keep it at a 2, and it'll sort of give you that for forever. It's not perfect, but it still works. It doesn't really matter what number you put in as long as the output you're getting is consistent with what you're wanting. So yeah, cool. It's just reading your AOV. And that's what it's doing. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, so let's take another question at this point. So Christy is asking, what's your perspective on attribution windows? So 7-day click doesn't work for us because the pixel needs more data. Our spend is less than 1,000 a day. So we've been doing 7-day click, 1-day view, 1-day engaged view. We run a ton of video ads, but I'm worried that Meta is taking credit for too much spend. Thoughts?
Sure. We click optimize everything, 7-day click or 1-day click. Typically, like my most standard setup is 7-day click target ROAS plus 1-day click bid cap. The point of that is actually just to make them as different as possible while maintaining conversion optimization so that we can reach the widest range of potential customers possible. There's going to be some overlap in value and volume customers, in 7-day click and 1-day click customers. That's just people who are like sort of more impulsive versus not. Anyway, so we tend to do that. View attribution, I think, is overwhelmingly misleading. I understand the reason you're using it here, which is to give more signal to Meta. That's the best reason to use view attribution, which is that Meta gets more conversion signal. The problem is I don't really want Meta having too much view conversion signal. It's the wrong kind of signal to give it. So I would say if you're getting low conversion volume, that's a really big problem, actually. It's really challenging. I understand that's tricky. I would probably still go 7-day click. Either way, I would measure on 7-day click. In fact, what I would really measure on is 28-day click. All other things being equal for all other brands across all the averages, if you're optimized that way, pretty much in your Meta ad account, 28-day click ROAS, assuming that you have your pixel set up correctly and all those things, tends to be roughly the true incremental value creation of your ads. Tends to be. So I hope you hear all the qualifiers I just put into that, but it's generally the case. Independent meta-analyses from Common Thread Collective and from another incrementality firm looking at like hundreds of incrementality tests in meta ads said, and I'm curious, Pranav, if you guys have internal data about this, but have suggested that basically the true incremental value creation of your meta ads is 7-day click times 115 to 120%, right? So if you're getting a 1-to-1 on 7-day click, then the true value creation is something like 1.15 to 1.2 on average, right? So, but you should generally regress your individual results to the mean. So the average is probably pretty helpful. So I don't know, Pranav, do you guys have different, I don't know if you guys done anything like that.
We haven't done that type of an analysis, but I mean, there must be some natural ratio on an average basis, and that feels directionally sort of right, but I can't say it with high confidence. Okay,
that's fine.
One more question here that I think we skipped. I know Advantage Plus likes to go after easy sales wins. I don't know if if
Yeah.
you would agree with that, but I have a brand who runs a lot of TV spots, and I feel Meta is swarming towards these TV visitors and getting easy wins without actually getting real new reach or new scale. How do I
Yeah.
avoid this? How do I segment this?
I do reject the premise. It's not obvious to me that Advantage Plus likes to go after easy sales wins. There's probably some degree to which that's true. But you are describing a perfect candidate to reach out to Pranav after this and start running incrementality tests. Because what you're describing is a more complex media mix. And you are the kind of brand, if you're running TV spots and Meta and you're seeing weird relationships between these things, the answer to your question is not for me to sit here and tell you theoretically what's possible. It's for you to start running incrementality tests. And if you're running a brand that has enough money to be running TV spots, you have enough money to run these. So dial up Pranav after this and start running tests. And those are both channels, by the way, Meta and TV, that are pretty easy to build holdouts with. Those should be no problem for you to do that. So that's my answer to your question, is to start running incrementality tests with Pranav and Paramark. We've done it with them. We're a Paramark customer, and they've been great for us.
Mic drop. We can just close this. No, I'm kidding.
You're welcome.
I'm kidding. Okay, let's talk about a couple more things. And if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. We're at the final sort of stretch here. Account structure and some new features.
Yep.
Talk about flexible ads. Like, how is what are these, and is it different from Advantage? Like, I'm confused about how these work.
Yeah. Flexible ads is Meta's way of allowing you to take multiple pieces of creative, put them into one ad alongside multiple pieces of copy and things like that, and sort of put it into one super ad that then can mix and match these all at once. And it does not give you creative level reporting. The old dynamic ad used to give you creative level reporting. And the thing is, these definitely work. They work like probably better than the sum of their parts. Like, it's not just because you're putting more ads in one thing. It also allows you to put more ads into one ad set without sort of overloading the ad set level. Like, the general rule of thumb is like 20-ish ads per ad set is probably what you want. Don't hold that too hard and fast. There's like exceptions to it, but like, and I'm not sure it's a huge indicator of performance. But that's what we do basically, is 20 ads per ad set. Not a super strong opinion of mine, but there you go. Flexible ads would allow you to put more creative into those 20 ads and because Meta is optimizing at the ad set level, it gets more conversions into less ad sets, which allows you to then theoretically get more signal to the ad set. So that can be valuable there, but it doesn't give you creative level reporting. So our solve for that is that we only put ads together if they have the same message. So I don't really care which format wins. It doesn't matter to me. What I believe drives creative performance is messaging. And so we'll put in all kinds of different formats and video and still and whatever else into flexible ads, as long as they have this roughly the same message. And that's our whole creative process is built around message. So we know if they have the same message. We literally label them and number the messages and stuff like that. And then we do that. People from Meta have told me multiple times that they are not ever going to give humans access to the creative level reporting, specifically because they don't want you getting in there and screwing with it. Because they know what you are going to do, and I know what you're going to do too. You're going to get in there and you're going to click around and be like, oh, this is the ad that's spending everything. Turn off all the other ones. And it's going to make the performance worse. And they know that, and I know that. So they're just hiding it from you. So
let me repeat this back to you. So what you're saying is, like, if and I know this is not a hard rule, but if you have 20 ads in an ad set, each of those ads is a flexible ad. And within those flexible ads, you have multiple versions of the same message, basically.
Yes. And we don't necessarily do every ad flexible, but we do it a lot. So yeah.
And what are the things that you recommend tying together in one ad set? If each ad is at the ad level, it's like a specific message and maybe some flexibility around it. So what is the logical grouping of the things that you put in an ad set? And I know this might be a very newbie question, but I'm curious.
No, it's not at all. People get this wrong all the time. People will do all stills, all video, like angle, whatever. I think that's all wrong. Product. The answer is economic unit. Because you have to set your value or your ROAS or your CPA target at the ad set level. So the mistake I see people make all the time is they organize their products with a bunch of products producing like I saw a brand recently that had, like, it's an apparel brand that had shorts and shirts in the same ad set. Well, shirts were producing a $60 AOV and shorts were producing an $80 AOV. And that was going to screw things up, because if you're running lowest cost on those, now a $30 CPA on one of those is a 2-to-1, a $30 CPA on the other one is like a 2.3-to-1 or something like that. You should separate those. It also is going to help you manage inventory better, at least at the ad set level. And in our setups, we do a lot of campaign level separation for products and collections as well. But I don't care. I mean, combine all the angles you want. In fact, Meta actively says they want more. They call it creative liquidity. They want more creative diversity at the ad set level, allows them to reach further. So there's no problem in like putting angles together or anything like that. But economic unit is the key distinction.
Cool. And then you also talk about this concept of account spend limits. Has this ever blown up in your face, like not having this, or have you heard
Yeah,
of
for
like horror
sure.
stories?
Anybody, because if you run manual bids, one of the things you know is that you don't want. One of the things you know is that Meta has bugs sometimes where it will sort of blow through your manual bids and spend a bunch of money. That's like one of the biggest downsides to manual bids, right? So, and you never want your spend to actually hit your budget, because the whole idea is that if you do that, that means you were limiting your potential reach on an ad. So you either want to make your bid more efficient, more conservative, or you want your budget to go up. Take more volume or more efficiency, always. You just don't want to hit budget and do that. Otherwise, your manual bid's not doing what it's supposed to do. So that means there's budget room. So like right now I have a, grant, I just pull it up, like just to check this as we're answering this question. It's like the budget is 10 grand for this campaign. It's probably going to spend 4 grand today, which means if Meta has a bug and starts burning through budget really fast, then they're going to just blow $6,000 or something like that, or what, depending on the time of day. So an account spend limit, which you can set at the account level, and it's going to do that across every campaign, by the way. So account spend limit sort of limits the damage there. It just says like, if you keep your account spend level at some level relative to that, we just go update it every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and just make sure that, Meta's not blowing money really fast. The place it can actually hurt you also, though, is that if you forget that you have the account spend limit there, and then like your spend is going awesome because an ad takes off, and then you just like lose volume because it hits the account spend limit. You won't even get it's not a pacing mechanism. It just stops spending. It's like, it doesn't pace your spend. So yeah, so it's like you'll just stop spending and you won't even notice it. Like your account will just stop spending, and there won't be like anything in Meta telling you hit your spend limit. Like it's like crazy. So, but it's a good idea to use it. If you're running manual bids, you should definitely be using account spend limits. Some people use campaign spend limits as well, which you can do. Like you can set this kind of anywhere, but it's just a backstop. It's a safeguard against a Meta bug.
Cool. All right. One question about a specific feature. I see Meta strongly suggests related media with ads. Is this a good idea? How often will it swap the main content with related?
I don't know, and I have not tested this specifically. Hello again, Justin. It's good to see you again. I have not tested this specifically, but my default position is to say yes to Meta recommendations until I see good evidence otherwise. So this is the opposite of many people, but again, go back to my first principle that I stated earlier. It's that Meta has really strong incentive to give you the best performance possible at the most scale possible. Use it. They do have some incentive also to, Anyway, I think that's their way of nudging you into flexible media, and you should use it.
Okay, great. All right. Last piece of conversation. Let's talk about FPAR. What is FPAR? Did you just invent this?
No, my friends at BTS Studio invented this, behind the scenes studio. But it is a metric I have noticed and cared about for a long time. I just never had a name for it. Basically, FPAR is my favorite creative metric because it's actually not a metric about creative performance at all. It's about creative operations. Because the real challenge with creative is producing a lot of good creative at scale. Like I said earlier, creative supply chain. That's the hardest part. It's not really any individual performance related thing. It's about building a machine that outputs creative. Even with AI, this is still hard. So FPAR is a great metric because FPAR is the rate at which the ads that come from your design and edit team are approved the first time they come through. So they require no re-edits. We care about this metric because re-edits slow down your creative process. If a designer or a video editor has to go and redo an ad because something was wrong, then that means they can't work on a new ad. And so FPAR, first pass approval rate, is how many times when they sent the ad through, we just approved right away. Inevitably, in a client relationship, this gets better over time. There's always a couple months where it's bad because you're getting used to a new brand. You care a lot about presenting the brand well. And so the client will say, oh, your music is wrong. Your language is a little wrong here, whatever it is. And that's super normal. Great clients, in fact, communicate that kind of feedback critically to design teams. One of the things I'll encourage people to do here is in your process with an internal team, external team, whoever it is, assume that the people working on your ads are smart and good designers and editors. Just assume baseline they're competent, okay? Start there and then make it your responsibility to help turn that talent that they have into value for your brand. And the way you do that is with clear feedback, clear delineation. The way this goes really wrong is that brands will go, that's off-brand and quote unquote. But what off-brand actually means is like, I don't really like it that much because I'm the CEO and whatever that happens. Like it's your responsibility to document what on-brand actually is. And now like the AI answer to this in part is that documentation becomes part of an AI framework, like certainly how we do it at AJF Growth, where we like, that documentation goes into files that our AI co-writer Prometheus has with us that we then from the baseline we do that, and then we go update things at the file level, etc. And now we can build tools that help us do this at more scale and all that kind of stuff. So, but FPAR I love because I just love thinking about this idea of like, how do you get more ads that are approved right away? When you can do that, you can speed up your process, take more shots on goal, and win. I know one guy who has a 100% FPAR for his brand as a baseline position. And I think this is logical. And basically the idea is he doesn't even look. He just hires people he trusts, puts it all in the ad account. And then if something starts spending and he doesn't like it because he thinks it is off brand or something like that, he can just turn it off. And he just knows it's not that big of a cost to do that. But it also helps him quantify the cost of turning that ad off, right? Because if that ad is spending $5,000 a day, then you ask yourself, man, how much do I believe this is off brand? Is it worth $150,000 in spend per month for me to turn it off? Like, would I pay $150,000 worth of spend to not have this ad? That's a high cost. You better really believe that's off brand. So anyway, so that's the idea too. So there you go.
Fantastic. All right. Andrew, this was a masterclass. Thank you for everything. We covered a lot of questions live. If there are questions that people have, put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll take them right now. One thing that I want to end on is, are there, so here's my personal take on Meta. I feel Meta is the best ads platform that I have seen across all the consumer platforms out there.
For sure.
Do you agree with that? And is that why you chose to specialize in Meta?
I didn't really choose to specialize in Meta. This gets to my origin story, but one time I sat down with Taylor Holiday when I was having a career change, and he said, "We got to get customers in the funnel." And I said, I was so new to marketing. I knew literally nothing about marketing. He said, "We're going to use Google ads and Meta ads to get customers, or Facebook ads at the time. This is 11 years ago. We're going to get customers in the funnel for our brand, and that's how we're going to grow." And I said, "What's the funnel?" So that was where my marketing knowledge was. And so he explained that to me. So I started on Facebook and Google, and then over time, Facebook ads, Meta ads has just continued to be this monster. So I've just stayed with it for that reason. I definitely agree. I think I actually just put out a podcast episode about channel diversification with Connor McDonald from Ridge, media channel diversification. Like, one of the smartest guys in our space. Connor's just really, really smart. And ultimately, where they have the most diversified media mix in Ridge's wallet business, it's still like almost 50% Meta spend, even when they're like spending a bunch more, because it just by far has the most money. And Connor's advice to everybody is, when you think it's time to start diversifying media, get better at Meta. That's like, and it's because there's the most reach at the most value creation the fastest, and that's it. Spend your next dollar where it creates the highest return in your business. That's the answer.
Love it.
So yeah, I'm with you.
All right, folks, ajfgrowth.com, btsstudio.co. We'll send out the recording to everybody. Go subscribe to Andrew's content. Go subscribe to Paramark's content, and you'll get an email right as this ends. And then we'll have a bunch of follow-ups for everybody. All right, fantastic. Andrew, have a great weekend. Thanks again for doing this with us.
Yeah, that's it. I just dropped the link to my YouTube channel too. So if you want any more content from me, it's all there. It's also at ajfgrowth.com/podcast. That's all the Spotify and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to follow up on any of that stuff there, go for it. And Pranav, thanks so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good one, everyone.
See ya.
All right, folks. That was Andrew Faris, the CEO of AJF Growth. And if you're in the Meta ecosystem, I highly recommend following him on X, on LinkedIn, on his website, and his podcast. And tune in again next week to Brandformance for another fantastic episode.